Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Behind the Screen, a show where we sit around and we talk about things that we love in the world of gaming. I'm JM, and I'm your host on this. Today, we're talking about something that I really love. I not only just love because I enjoy the mechanical beauty of it, the ease of its use, the fact that I get to write for it, but also the fact that I get to play with it. Um, in a game that John Doom and I are both playing in right now. And I'm talking about Savage Worlds Superpowers Companion. So before we get into that, hello to everyone in the chat. Always good to see you. Thanks to everybody who has sent well wishes and concerns about Zane. He is doing well. He's recovering. It'll take a little while, but he'll get back there. In the meantime, he stole my Savage Worlds book and is making a ton of characters and writing an adventure for it right now. So, Savage Worlds kind of built its name on fun, fast, furious pulp adventures. Deadlands, 50 Fathoms. They are known for more of their pulp cinematic style than I would say a super crunchy build style, if you will. Now, that's not to say you can't have fun building Savage Worlds characters. You can have a ton of fun. And John Doom has been helping me get a ton of use out of the Savage World system, always suggesting little tweaks, edges, and hindrances, and how they all work together. But I cut my superhero teeth on a completely different style of gaming. My first superhero game was Palladium's Heroes Unlimited, which I made characters for about 2 years before I actually knew that it was a game. Character creation system was very well explained. Everything else, not so much. I ended up having to play in a buddy's GURPS game and went, oh, this is how it works. I used GURPS superpowers to run a ton of superhero campaigns. And then I hit a point where I was like, I want more. I want more of a challenge. And I decided to dabble with Champions. So Champions was a real heavy game. I made it as simple as I could for my players because I just built their characters. I asked what they wanted, and they didn't have to read Champions 6th edition characters book, which was close to 500 pages if I remember correctly, and could stop a bullet. And so I would just make their characters, and the system kind of dropped below the surface. So hello to everyone in the chat. I see we have new people. Ian, thanks for bringing James. Good to see you. John, Mark, Rook, Padre, good to see all of you. So I will be honest, I have a lot of love for building superpowers in superhero games. And so when the Superpowers Companion came out, I was like, cool, let's see how this works. Now you got to understand, I come fairly new to Savage Worlds, especially for a deep dive as a system I'm playing at the table. Again, played some Deadlands back in the day, dabbled a bit in Explorer Edition, and now I'm here all in with Suede. So I love Champions, by the way. Ian, I feel like the key to unlocking Champions is the idea that 5 points buys you 1d6 of damage. Once you understand that is the basis for everything, building characters is super simple. So I got into Savage Worlds Adventure Edition, started writing for Suede. One of the first things I did is the Return of Dr. Destruction. I knew of Necessary Evil. I was aware of Necessary Evil back when it came out in the early 2000s, but I never played Necessary Evil. So I was really interested to see how this all was going to come together because Necessary Evil 3, the game changer, just wrapped up. You'll soon be able to back it, I think, as a pre-order if you haven't backed it already. So if you love Savage Worlds, what is this companion? So their companion books are designed to give you a ton of new rules, mechanics, setting rules, and advice, edges, hindrances, everything you know and love of Savage Worlds, but for a specific genre. There's the superhero or superpower one, which is out already. Coming soon will be the fantasy companion, as well as the horror companion, and then at some point in the future, the sci-fi companion. I know it's in the works. I have no insider information to share with you on that. Oh man, I did play Aberrant, Padre, but mainly because I still like saying the word aberrant. It sounds like what it is. It's just like aberrant. So, how does it work? So essentially, you make your Savage Worlds character as normal, but you get a pool of superpower points. Your power level is rated between 1, sort of like street level, early X-Men, pulp superheroes. So things that you would see in Torg in the Nile Empire, the Phantom, the Shadow, those sort of things. Power level 3 is kind of your base superhero level, so 4-color comics. Not really on the level of, say, like Superman. He'd probably be power level 4. And then power level 5 is your cosmic level threats. And essentially you get a pool of power points to spend, and then you also get a pool of, or a maximum that you can spend on any one power. So you can't take all 45 power points and dump it into one power and just obliterate everything. You'll generally have a limit of about a third of that, if my math brain is remembering correctly. He said flipping. Yeah, good job, JM. About a third of your total power points can be spent on one power. You get a ton of new edges and hindrances and base rules and a lot of heroes and villains as examples. But the core of the book is the superpowers. And essentially, if you've played Savage Worlds, you kind of already know how this works. Savage Worlds, instead of having spells, they have powers, right? And powers cost so many power points to cast. You can put limitations on them. You can put modifications to change the cost of the power points when you cast the spell. That is essentially the same way superpowers work in this game. It takes an established rule for Savage Worlds powers and applies it in a totally new area, superpowers. And so once again, we get this through line of logic and design logic through Savage Worlds that is elegant in its simplicity. If somebody's played a wizard or seen a faith-based character or a weird science character work at the table, they basically know how to build a superhero. So you just think of what you want. And again, much like the powers, the trappings are almost incidental. You pick what the core of the power is, and then build it out from there. So do you want to shoot fire beams from your hands? Well, that's easy. You jump over to the ranged attack superpower. Again, very simple. It's a ranged attack. You get to flavor it how you want. And then you build it. Dice cost so many points, and then you build modifiers on top of that. Does it have armor piercing? Is it only lethal? Can you shoot it as a cone? Does it have a spread? Does it have reach? All of these different things. And then you just go through and you build your superpowers. That's it. It is very easy to just take a concept and build your character around it. Yes, Padre, you can do so much with it. I actually am toying around with a fantasy setting where the fantasy characters, the player characters, the wild cards essentially, have power level 1, maybe a little bit less, superpowers instead of kind of the typical magic. Daryl mentioned it when we were on the Tabletop Tango. I pitched him the idea last year at Gen Con, and it seemed to have stuck because he's still noodling it, as am I. A couple of ones that I really like, a rule that I really like, is they have this thing called Power Stunt. So Power Stunt replicates the idea that sometimes you're going to use your powers in ways that sort of mimic other powers, but they're still within your wheelhouse. So, for example, the Thing rolling an enemy up in in asphalt, or bending a piece of rebar or a street lamp around an opponent to restrain them. Well, that's typically governed by the Entangle power, but it's also well within the tropes of superhero comics. So how do they handle it? They handle that with something called power stunts. Spend a penny, figure out how it works, and use it just this once. I mean, probably more than once. If it works out really well for you, you're going to keep the rules in the back of your mind as soon as you see someone else do something cool with their powers. In our Necessary Evil game, John Doom's poison claws were used to heal someone because, right, the difference between medicine and poison is really just a matter of dosage. I love that. I am using so they take the power stunts and then they give you what I would call the Green Lantern toolkit. So they give you a series of super abilities. So the two are super science and super sorcery. Now, these I would not recommend for starting Savage Worlds characters because every time I'm playing a super sorcerer, basically I can spend a penny to make any power in the game as a one-off ability. So you really got to know the system, and you really got to know the superpowers well to get the most out of this. But I love it. I feel like if somebody's really creative and knows the system real well, this rewards them for really digging into that and getting to do those cool one-off spells that we see in, the Doctor Strange comics, or my personal favorite, Doctor Fate. So, yeah, I see Padre is using so you're running Warhammer in the Savage Worlds system, and I love that idea. Yeah, you could spend a penny to time teleport wounds out of people, replacing the flesh before they had the injury. That's awesome. And that's the thing, you just need to build the base power, and then you get to describe the fluff and the flavor. Now, like with other trappings, just be aware that how you describe the power is important. If you set your ranged attack to be fire blasts and you come against somebody who has elemental protection fire, it's going to kick in. On the plus side, you could always argue that you can set other things on fire. So it's cool. And it's simple. As someone who has tried a lot of different superhero games, this is elegant. It feels as robust as GURPS and Champions without requiring all of the multiplication and division that you had to do. And I'm not joking. If you've ever played GURPS or Champions, you know that some modifiers and limitations were fractional. So this power increased the cost by 0.25 as opposed to 1, or decrease the cost by 0.25. So you'd add up all of your multipliers, subtract the limitations, do some fractional math, and then multiply that by the base cost of the power. This is way simpler. Does it add 2? Sweet. Do you need to drop it down by 1 or 2? Look for some limitations. It all works nice and elegantly, as I said. I appreciate elegant game design, and from what I'm enjoying is most times elegant game design is the simplest solution to a design problem. One that stays in line with your core mechanics and doesn't ask your table or your GM or your players to radically step outside of the base design principles. All right, so you just designed Grey Seer to see if you could do it. Well, I would love to see that, Padre. That's awesome. So speaking of Savage Worlds, I'm going to give a little after-action report now that we finished the Superpower Companion. I didn't want to bury the lead on this. We said we were talking about it. Thursday, we're going to talk about Necessary Evil and my love of that. Trying to get people excited about it because it is coming back. So I wanted to get that out of the way before I talked. I got to run a Savage Worlds game last night for a friend of mine and my wife's kind of a birthday / glorious 25th of May Discworld adventure. And I decided to run it in Savage Worlds. And you know what? It went super smoothly. Had a reformed thief who had the choice of going to jail, or Captain Carrot gave her the option of joining the watch, and of course, who can refuse Captain Carrot? And a dwarf fresh off the cart from the mountains, clueless, unaware of how the city of Ankh-Morpork actually works. Their commander was given a file that the Night Watch didn't actually complete. So this buddy cop duo was sent out into Ankh-Morpork to discover who was breaking into student dormitories at the Unseen University and rearranging all their stuff in a less pleasing, less efficient manner. They discovered that the students that had been hit were part of a disturbance at the Octarine Parrot that happened about a year ago during a strange outbreak of dead people not staying dead, kind of walking around as the undead. Seemed like Death was on a vacation or possibly had retired. While they did some tracking down, they used L-Space to get into the Unseen University through the file room, which no one goes into, at the Watch Commander, or at the Watch Station, and bribed the librarian with a bushel of bananas, and discovered that somebody was doing a lot of research into the events that happened when Death took a holiday, or was retired, or was just missing, as well as hauntings and other things. At that point, the university was attacked by a couple of ethereal or ectoplasmic spiders, which are dwarf, not unusually tall. Just a dwarf who heard that if they did not want to remain in the mountains and wanted to experience femininity, they could head into the city and join the Watch. So after dispatching the spiders, they kept finding out that there was a ninth wizard that was part of this disturbance. He was squished by a troll, and his soul has seemed to have slipped through the cracks. This haunting was probably due to not all of the souls who died during these events actually being caught up with. Some of them slipped through the bureaucratic cracks. Or in this case, literal cracks. The wizard who was squashed flat by the troll, his soul was squashed so thin that he slipped between the cracks of a flagstone in the dormitory and was using his powers as an inferior decorator to harass these other students. Well, how do you get Death's attention? The easiest way to point out this soul is to summon Death. Well, none of my watch members were wizards, and so none of them wanted to go through a ritual. And the simplest way to summon Death, neither of them were willing to shuffle loose their mortal coil to get a message to Death. So a plan was hatched. They got a wizard to speak to a rat to give a message to the Grim Squeaker. And after killing the rat's ghost gave a message to the Grim Squeaker, who gave a message to Death, who came and retrieved the errant soul. And so the mission wrapped up quite nicely. It was a great little buddy cop one-shot set in Discworld, and I was immediately asked to run it again. Which I think I will. I think there will be another Discworld one-shots using Savage Worlds. And I think that's... We all know that I really love games where the setting and the mechanics are perfectly merged. One of the things I love about Savage Worlds is, games like Deadlands, where they are. Holler, which is perfectly themed. But I really love having a go-to system where I'm like, I've got this weird idea for a one-shot. I really don't want to run GURPS Discworld. So let me just pick up Savage Worlds, put a couple of characters together on savage.us, and go with it. It was just delightful. And yes, Tink, I do think you need to draw the Grim Squeaker. For those of you who don't know, the events I was referring to come from Rook, that is... So, in Reaper Man, Death is forcibly retired for having too much self-awareness, the gall to develop a personality outside of his job. And so souls don't move on for a while. the bureaucratic response is to break death up into a bunch of sub-deaths. None of them are actually getting their job done. So when death retakes his mantle, he absorbs all of the souls except for one. One essence of death fights for dear life, holds on, and refuses to be reabsorbed. That is the death of rats, also known as the Grim Squeaker. A skeletal mouse in a hood with a tiny scythe and is adorable. So, that is my little after-action report. Nothing more than me crowing about a great session that I had, and hopefully inspiring you for your own pun-filled Discworld enjoyment. But seriously, if you like superheroes, if you want a more detailed power set for your rules, maybe you don't like the way spells work and you want people to have innate magic, like Xanth, this works for it. So many things that we call superpowers in fantasy are just sets of abilities. Perhaps you have a fire warlock, but you like the idea of them always being able to call upon their innate abilities as opposed to spend power points. Great way to do that is with the Superpowers Companion. In fact, in Crucible, which is off tonight, my planned break for the group did not happen due to all of the family stuff last week, so we're going to take our break this week. But Sam Sorrow is a power level 1 super. My brain just died. Jenny and Haley's characters use powers as they are described in the Savage Worlds Adventure Edition book. Ben's given, depending on what he draws from the deck, is either getting superpowers, regular powers, or edges. So, yeah, they all work at the table. They all are balanced against each other. Tweak it, give it a shot, try it out. If you do, let me know in the comments what you think about the Superpowers Companion. We'll be back on Thursday where we're going to talk about Necessary Evil and, you know, why it's necessary. We recorded our next series of 13th Age 2nd Edition podcasts with the game designer. Rob was able to join us for this session, and much hilarity did ensue. I'm getting head down into editing these files over the next couple of weeks, and we'll be releasing that. Speaking of Warlocks, Rook did some serious working to make 5e Warlock work in Suede. Your brain hurt after that. Let's chat about that. I would love to discuss that. Drop it into the Savage Worlds sub-channel on the Iconic Patreon. If you're not a member of the Iconic Patronage, first of all, why not? We have a ton of fun on our Discord channel. You get behind the scenes early access to things. You get videos every month from me, as well as getting access to our Discord and all of Evan's show notes from Exploring Glorantha, which is worth the price of admission by itself. But it's how we keep the lights on. It's how we get to do cool things like this, add sound effects to our actual play podcasts, pay for the time to kind of get things edited and put together. If you would like to become a patron, jump over to patreon.com/iconic production. You can find us over there. Hope to see you on the channel. So, Padre, I am looking forward to getting those as well when PEG releases them. They should be, soon-ish. Not my wheelhouse. I'm really more focused on making sure we signal boost the crap out of everything Savage Worlds related on the Savage Universe podcast. John Doom has more information than I do. So, John, there you go. So, until next time, stay safe, stay healthy, stay gaming. I will see you all on Thursday for more Behind the Screen. Have a good one. Oh, one last thing. We will be live at 2 o'clock talking with Richard about Amboria, the Kickstarter that's going on by Strange Owl Games, talking about world building with poetry. So, now, until next time, have a good one.